Let's take a look at the wins. Let's take a look at the players that we were on and got right at the start of the season. Michael Bolton.
Thanks, Josh. It's Michael Bolton here, and it's time for another episode of the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast. Let's get to it.
Let's get to it, indeed.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NBA fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast, brought to you by Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd, and the Australian version of Whose Mans Is This is just your mate. I'm also the lead fantasy analyst at basketballmonster.com, and thank you for making Locked On Fantasy Basketball your first listen every day. We are free. We are available on all platforms. Today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off for your first year. Also, go ahead and check out lockedondaily.com and sign up for the newsletter. It's free. It's for your favorite team. All the info, whether it's the playoffs, the lottery, the draft, all of that stuff. And we're giving away some gift cards. 3 people that sign up before the end of April can get a chance to win. Well, 3 people will win. All of you will get a chance to win a gift card from Best Buy, from Fanatics, or from Game Time. I'm sure you're already here double banging and getting those thumbs working and leaving your comments down below. We're going to do a series of these videos like we do every year to sort of look back and see where we were at in terms of hitting or missing on players. And there are multiple ways that you can look at this, right? Because obviously when we head into the season, there are different formats of leagues, clearly. But there's also different ways of what's a win and what's a loss. Because we have ADP, average draft position. You have the ranks that sites put out, which often draft rooms get sorted that way. But what is a win? Is a win if I say that somebody is 50th and the site has them with an ADP of 80th and they finish like 70th? Is that a win? Probably. A small one. That's probably a win. Is it a win if a site has an ADP of 50 and I say, no way, not touching it, I've got them at 90, and then they finish at 80? Is that a win? Also a win. Even though it's a win because we avoided, it's a win because we drafted. And the same with losses. You can have a loss because I said to avoid somebody, but you shouldn't have. Or I could say that I had a loss because I was too high on a player and they didn't live up to it. So there are sort of 4 subcategories of wins and losses when we're talking about fantasy results. And your mileage is going to vary on all of this stuff and how you want to assess and view it and recap your season. And most of this stuff, again, the reason we do this is a level of accountability, but also a learning process. Why were we right? Why were we wrong? How do we take it into the next season? Because honestly, whenever we do this stuff, it's all well and good to say, he did this. And then you go, okay, now what? What does it mean? What do we do from it? Because it's happened. You can't change that it happened. So do we learn a lesson from it? Do we just go, well, that's absolute garbage and we can't do anything with it? Like, for example, a name I'm not going to mention here is Zion Williamson. Like, my per game season projection for him for category leagues, -1, was 24th. He finished 25th. Right? That's bang on. His ADP was 50th, but he played like 30 games. So is it a win or is it a loss? Well, I'm not even going to include it in any of them. It's sort of both, honestly, because we knew there was a risk in terms of injury. But in terms of predicting and projecting his overall value to a team, it was bang on. Like, that was right, and that was ahead of ADP. But he didn't stay healthy, and he probably never will. So what do we learn from it? We learn from it that if he was there, then yeah, you're going to get value on him. If he played, you will get value almost certainly on Zion Williamson. But how do you know that he's going to play? That's that sort of lesson. It's never a single lesson for any situation. There's many different ways that we can go about all of this stuff. And one of the ways we'll go about it is just by shutting up and getting into it. So in this show on World Marbles Day, what we're going to be looking at is the guys that we hit on by being ahead of ADP. The guys that we saw in ADP and went, ooh, that's a bit low. Sleepers, if you will. We go, that's a low ADP. Why are people waiting so long to draft this guy? And thinking that it worked out. That's the way that I want to look at this. So let's take a look at just the things that I'm going to sort of be paying attention to begin this. I'm going to be looking at where I had the player in their preseason -1, what their end of season -1 was, and the points league stuff, it sits very similar to this. So even though I'm using -1 as a benchmark tool here to judge this stuff, it is going to be almost the same thing for a points league. So don't if you're in a points league, it's not excluding you. This is just the methodology. I can't use a methodology. What about if we do -1? What if we do Roto? What if we do Yahoo points? What if we do CBS points? What if we do ESPN points? What if we do your magical, flavorful, different points format, which is clearly the best format, which makes points leagues better because you just got to find the right format to make points leagues better. You can't do all of those different things. But as the general rule, the vibe around all of these players, whether it was a win or a loss or a hit or a miss or whatever, is going to be the same. We're going to use it to compare with Yahoo ADP in the preseason. And I'm also going to include, for the ones that are important to note this, the ESPN ADP that was out there as well, because all the ESPN, not ADP, the rank in category leagues. So some of their ranks in category leagues were obviously like outrageous. They had some ridiculous ranks, and we can take advantage of that, even though the majority of users that are playing fantasy and watching these shows are not playing on ESPN. Yes, a lot of you are, but the majority aren't. It's like 30% ESPN. So that's why we don't focus as much on those numbers. And again, because the numbers are crazy, the roster percentage numbers make no sense. None of it is reflective of reality. First, before we get into the actual 7 names that I want to talk about, there's 6 others that I'll just give an honorary mention to. OG Anunoby was a guy that he had an ADP of 80, -1 at the start of the year. I had him at 68th. So I'm happy with how that worked out. In the end of the season, his end of season -1 rank was pretty strong. It was at 72. So it beats the ADP of 80. If you want to use the flawed total straight 9-cat rankings, he was 21st, which of course is insane and is not accurate and actually tells you nothing about OG moving forward. And what I didn't actually have a track of this because I was still sort of making sure that it made sense, and I do think it makes complete sense now, is my Durant ranking system, which instead of using the straight standard deviations, we're using a weighted format, but also a what's it called? A Yo Johnson transformation to make the numbers make more sense. That put OG at an end of season number at 64, which I think is basically about the right area where you consider OG and what his contributions were. Jakob Poeltl was a tougher one because obviously we got rapted at the end, and we knew we were going to get rapted because Jakob Poeltl told us that in the media day at opening preseason. He told us, yeah, we're not going to try, and we are going to sit guys down the stretch. He told us this. Poeltl had an ADP of 93. My ranking at the start of the season had him at 79th. In Durant, he ended 65th. In traditional -1 rankings, he ended 39th, so obviously cooked that number. And even for Yahoo totals, he was 69th. So by basically any measure, he ADP of 93, he beat it. Now, the problem again is if you're playing head-to-head leagues with playoffs, he wasn't there. So again, how do we judge numbers? This is where it gets a little bit murky with some of this stuff. And is he a win or is he a loss? Because Poeltl obviously wasn't there in your playoffs, but do we only judge players for what they did for the 3 weeks of your playoffs? Because that doesn't help anything as we move forward. So overall, I think where Poeltl was positioned in the preseason, we were right that he was going to be better than that. We had some skepticism about the availability, but we were right on that one. Draymond Green had an ADP of 101. And I know that many people won't actually believe in what he does for fantasy, but this one is one of those ones where points leagues are nowhere near as good. But he finished I had him 62nd in preseason -1 numbers. He finished 83rd and 72nd in Durant, so way better than 100th. And with Draymond, we know what the story is. It's like drafting Giannis. You're punting free throws. With Draymond, you're punting points. It's just a very simple equation. These things are happening, and you have him on the team if it makes sense. And that is why when we're making these draft picks in category leagues and you see someone like him sitting at an ADP of 101, for you, it's either no, he's 200th or no, he's 70th. And then that makes sense to you or it doesn't. And that's where real value appears. And it happened there. Rowan Barrett, RJ Barrett had an ADP of 108. That was one of those ones where sites were trying to slide the difference between traditional 9-count rankings and points league rankings, because for points leagues, he's way better than this. But the way that I approach head-to-head category leagues, and he's a guy that I did target a lot. There were obviously annoyances down the stretch, but I had him 94th in category leagues. He ended better than that, 80th in Durant, and that beats that ADP of 108. Happy with that. The man on the Lakers, LeBron James, had an ADP of 24. -1, I had him ranked 13th in the preseason, so I am happy that he was. Okay, but you know what? When I had the projection of 13th, I was like, I don't think I'm going to take LeBron in that spot. I would take him at the end of the second round around that area. But he did beat, again, the ADP projection. He did get hurt, but he didn't miss a huge amount of time. That's a W for him. And the last one is one that obviously was just cruelled by injury, but I was pretty bullish on Jalen Suggs heading into the season. Suggs had an ADP of 102. I had him at 84. He was basically around that mark, and then he got hurt and never returned. So that's just one to keep in mind for next season, but also worth noting that a lot of Suggs' damage was done when Franz and Paolo are out. So will that be the thing that happens next season? We bloody hope not. But that one I think is just one. It's not. I'm not going to include these as official wins, but it was just one that I think is worth mentioning. We're going to come back with the 7 names that I do want to talk about in more detail. Today's episode, though, is brought to you by Upwork. When you're scaling your business, you need the right expertise at the right time. With Upwork, you can find specialized freelancers in marketing, development, design, and more. Experts that are ready to help you take your business to the next level. Upwork gives businesses flexibility by connecting them with top freelance talent across multiple industries, including IT, AI, web development, and marketing. And whether it's just extra hands you need for a short-term project or something long-term, Upwork makes hiring simple and affordable. Visit Upwork.com right now and you can post your job for free. That is UPWORK.com, Upwork.com, to connect with top talent and grow your business today. All right, so now let's dig into these names of these 7 big wins that I'm going to highlight for the season. Again, I could make an argument that I would have 50 wins and I would have 50 losses, and that's just the way it works. But these are the ones that I think are the most impactful, with the biggest rises and the most important ones to talk about. And we're going to start in LA, and we are going to start with Jim Harden, because James Harden, we knew that Kawhi Leonard, or not, maybe we didn't know. It depends on when you were drafting or how you wanted to view the information coming out of the Clippers. But we knew that, we knew this. We knew Paul George wasn't going to be there. We knew that there wasn't a high usage player that was replacing him. And I was very confident that we were not getting Kawhi Leonard to begin this season, nor would we get Kawhi Leonard to play big chunks of this season. So I was very much in on James Harden. And when the original ADPs opened on Yahoo, and the rankings opened for Yahoo, Harden was nowhere to be seen anywhere near where he finished. Now, as you can see, if you are watching on the video, for Durant rankings, he finished 3rd. That's per game. For Yahoo points, he was 12th per game. He averaged 45 points. These are ridiculously good numbers for a guy whose ADP did come into number 15. I had him ranked 10th in the preseason. So in the end, I'm happy with that result that I was able to get out of him there. But if I go back and look at the first ADP result for Jim Harden was 26 on Yahoo. Like that's a very low number. It's obviously way too low. I'm gonna have a look where he was on the Yahoo initial rank that came out. Yeah, he was 25th there as well. And next thing we look at is where he was on ESPN, which he was 39th. So like just unbelievable value. So I was very, very adamant if we get him around that early second round in the turn. If you wanted to go in the first round, while it was risky, we could do it. He cooked. 30 usage, 35 minutes, played games, almost every game. 23 points, 9 assists. Like, yeah, the shooting wasn't great, but 41 from the field, 87 from the line. This is not quite vintage Jim Harden, but it's pretty close. He was an unbelievable value play. If you took him around the turn, what a huge W that was for you, especially considering some of the bad picks that were in that area. He was reliable. Yes, again, bad field goals, but you know that's what James Harden does. So you account for that when you're making draft picks. Draft picks are never made in vacuums. You're never just making a pick and then going, wow, I can't believe it. He was bad at field goals and I had no idea and I didn't make any adjustment for it because it's obviously disingenuous, or you're a terrible fantasy player. And if you are a terrible fantasy player, welcome to the show. Stick with us and we'll hopefully teach some lessons to be at least mediocre. It's our aim. Aim for the middle. No, aim for the top. We're going to win. Harden was great. This is one of those ones that I thought seemed obvious. It's made sense. It panned out. Not exactly how I thought, but close enough. But what about his teammate? Again, it's one of these ones where I was like, I love getting Ivica Zubac late. I think that this is one of those things you fight back because there is a lot of anchoring bias that people have. Not everyone believed this. Some people did, some people didn't. But when you're like, Ty Lue has never played him over 30 minutes, so why would he play him now? Well, that's great. He hasn't ever. Doesn't mean he won't, because circumstances always change. And my rationale on this was Ty Lue would love going small, playing small ball, because he would have Kawhi and Paul George to guard on the perimeter. And guess what? He probably has neither of those guys. So their backup center situation was so bad like, what was it, Mo Bamba? That it was going to have to beat Zubac, and it was. I had him 70th in the preseason. His ADP, Ivica Zubac, was 84, which, it suggests that I beat that number. His rank on ESPN was 161, which is incredibly insane. That suggested because ESPN default league's 130 players deep. That suggested even in a 12-team league, you wouldn't draft Zubac, which again makes zero sense. Zubac in Yahoo 9cat totals is 9th, which is an insane number, and that's fraudulent. It's not real. His real value is around that 50 to 60 mark. Durant ranked him at 66. I had him 70th in the preseason. His ADP did come into 84, but I'm going to be pretty surprised because I do have all of the ADPs tracked. Yeah, his ADP began at 103, so we're able to bring it in all the way to 84 by the time we got to draft season, or the beginning of the regular season, and that's a huge W. So if we're able to draft Zubac, especially in early drafts, huge hit. Huge win. He was amazing. 17 and 13. He had a triple-double this season. The only thing that was bad about him, or weirdly bad, was he couldn't hit free throws. And in the past, he has been able to hit them. So I don't really know what happened there. That did start to correct as the season went on. But overall, like even 35th in points leagues is crazy. 40 fantasy points for a guy that began the season ranked outside the top 100. It's crazy value. And he is one of the guys that we did focus on quite a lot as a nice target in those late rounds, because it did seem to me that it was shaping up to be a really good spot. Let's now go to New York, who also have 2 players on this list. And we're going to start with Karl-Anthony Towns. Now, this one is, as soon as the trade was made, I was in on this. I said, this is huge for Towns. I love this for Towns. This is going to bump him way up, right into the first round discussions is what my thought was. In that turn, at least the turn, 10 to 15 zone of the first round. Now, there's always going to be pushback, and we love differing opinions, so we can debate back and forth, and we're not always going to be right, we're not always going to be wrong. One of the comments was, what are you talking about? Because my thing was, he's got to play center, so that means field goals, rebounds, and blocks go up. And I said, this team is not a good rebounding team. And the arguments were, they've got Mitchell Robinson and they've got Josh Hart. Okay, that's cool. Josh Hart is a good rebounder for his size, but Robinson's not going to be there. He's not going to play. And then the other argument was, well, they'll just play Robinson and Towns together. Now, I was on the right side of that. I said, they won't. Towns will be their starting center. And that worked out. So preseason, I had him 14th. He ended 15th. Yahoo Points had him 10th. His ADP was 19th. So you were able to get him. And again, when we look at the beginning of that, and I think that there is some influence in the way that I approach this in terms of adjusting Yahoo ADP. But his first listed ADP on Yahoo was 38. And that was on August the 25th. And it came in all the way down, kept coming in. But even as, where's his ADP? It's still outside. Yeah, it was still outside the top 30 as of October the 5th, Karl-Anthony Towns. So that's way after the trade. So you were able to get him at an incredibly good price for most of the preseason. I had him 14th. He ended 15th. That is a huge win to me, averaging 24 with 13 rebounds. Now, his blocks didn't go up as I thought they would, but elite field goals, elite free throws. He had 42% from 3 again. He didn't get as many assists as he has in the past, but still a ridiculously good season. Towns was great. He's a huge win if you got him. If you got him in round 3, what a W. If you got him in round 2, a gigantic W as well. And he played a lot of games. In like Yahoo 9cat straight totals, we hate the numbers, but he was 4th. Harden was 5th. Zubac was 9th. These are huge wins. And again, using those numbers is not a great way to state your case, but we're using per game numbers. So they were big wins. There's another guy on this list that ended up, actually 2 more guys on this list that we're going to talk about, that ended in the top 12 for Yahoo straight 9cat total rankings. But that's, overstating their value, but they were still awesome. And you still got great value on getting those guys. I'm sure you know who those players are, because we're going to get to them in a second. And one of them is, in fact, Karl-Anthony Towns' teammate. And we had OG Anunoby on this list as well. So that's 3 Knicks, although OG was maybe an honorary mention. We'll get to the other Knicks player plus the remaining guys on this list in a sec. Today's episode is brought to you, though, by Monarch Money. Do you ever check in on your bank account and you wonder, where did all the money go? Between dining out and online shopping and entertainment, it can be easy to lose track, and that is where Monarch Money comes in. It's your personal CFO, and it gives you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is not just a budgeting app, though. It is a complete financial command center, meaning you can track all of your accounts, all of your investments, and all of your spending in one place. So you're not just managing your money. You're doing that, which is, again, cool and fun and neat and slick and all that sort of stuff. But it helps you build wealth. It's got the all-in-one convenience of all your banking and finance apps in the one spot. So you don't have to worry about, I log in here, then I'll log in here, and what if I log out of here, and how long is it going to keep you? Like, it's all in one spot. You can track everything, and you can help plan those long-term goals. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That is monarchmoney.com. The code is LOCKEDONNBA for half off your first year. Let's go through a few more of these names now. Like I teased already, we are going back to New York, and we're going to talk about Josh the Hitman Hart. Now, he is a player, which, again, there's no point in me not being transparent with what I say, because you can just go back and check my videos, and there will actually be times where maybe I've even thought that I've said something and I said it differently at the time, which happens, and yeah, I don't like that, but it does happen. At the start of the preseason, I was not in on Josh Hart at all. Not in at all. I had him like 149th when things opened up, when my first projections came out at the beginning of August, which is obviously bad, right? But then the trade happened, and I was in. The reason I was out on that is they brought in Mikal Bridges. They had DiVincenzo. They had a full season of Randall. Like, Hart was going to be the sixth man, and he was not going to have the same opportunities that he had down the stretch of last season. So I was out. I was like, I'm not doing this with Josh Hart at all. I am not into it. But then, obviously, things change and we adjust. And by the time we got to the middle of September, or media day, basically when Towns was traded, I moved him very comfortably inside the top 100. Because it just meant that instead of being a 29-minute player, he's a 38-minute player. And you could make the argument that was so dumb, Josh. He would have played 38 minutes a night anyway. He wouldn't have. There was too many guys, and the way Tibbs run that rotation, the 240 game did not work to allow that. But when things opened up, by trading away multiple players, it meant that Hart was able to do a lot more. So in the end, I had him 76. Now, I was still way off. Hart was 45th in points leagues, averaging 38 fantasy points. He was 51st in Durant head-to-head category rankings. His ADP was 116, Josh Hart. 116. On ESPN, he was ranked 96. So they actually were ahead of the game there, ESPN. They had him at 96 versus Yahoo's ADP at 116. We got him down to 76 in the preseason. His traditional -1 rank is 35th. My Durant thing pushed him to 51 because of the way that it changes some of the weightings on stuff, which again, I think is a more accurate way to do it. But however you want to spin it, getting Josh Hart outside the top 100, which in most cases you did, is a gigantic W. He is, again, a guy that finished up in the top 12 from Yahoo straight 9-cat totals, which is a terrible way of evaluating it and has no forward projecting value whatsoever. Tells you nothing. You're never going to take him in round 1 or 2 or 3 or even 4. You wouldn't do it. It would be silly. Actually, you know what? Maybe you went to 4. But I think what the Hart situation illustrates to us is just how much changes or how much rosters make sense. Now, I love so many of these guys that do stuff fantasy basketball-wise and do it in the off-season. They're on the show all the time. We chat all the time. And Adam King, King, he knows this. He's like, let's do a mock draft. And he doesn't even bother asking me anymore because I go, King, you're joking, right? You cannot do a draft at this point. I'm vehemently against this. He doesn't even ask me anymore. He still does it. He loves doing it. But I think it tells you nothing. That's why I don't do it. Because we're going to have 70 players change teams, 80 new players enter the league through drafts and two-way contracts, and things, well, for some of them, won't change. For others, it'll change a lot. And Josh Hart's a key example of that. I wouldn't have touched him in drafts. I would have had him maybe the late round guy, maybe. But the trade happened. He jumped way up, and then he was even better than I expected on top of that. So he went from a guy that was avoiding. I go, I hate this. Like ESPN got him at 96. I hate it. To me, that's a bust. And then the trade happened. I went, 96, that's actually really good value. And it's all just dependent on circumstance. Everything is dependent on circumstance. Everything is relative. Everything is related. Nothing stands alone on an island. None of these numbers are just like, they're the numbers and they're not impacted by anything else because everything impacts everything. And that's why we've always got to be dynamic and ready to change. So, Kingy, good. I love that you're doing your draft. I don't believe that it has any value in it, so I won't do that sort of thing. And this is, to me, one of the illustrations as to why. Because the change there was, I thought, obvious when it happened, and it worked out even better than I could have anticipated that it happened. Sorry for the Kingy slander. We talked about this guy on the Fantasy Awards show yesterday, so I'm not going to get into too much detail about Dyson Daniels. But speaking of Kingy, Kingy was way higher on Daniels than I was. Now, I was high-ish on him. I wasn't sure what they were going to do. I was fairly certain they would start Dyson Daniels, but I thought he'd play 30 minutes and Bogdanovic would play 29, and it'd be a little bit frustrating, and Daniels will have some issues shooting, and he did. And I loved getting him in the late rounds. I had him 113th in the preseason, Dyson Daniels. He cooked, clearly. He was 7th in Yahoo totals. Again, insane. You would never draft him in round 1. Please don't draft him in round 2. Round 3 is a crazy time to draft him as well. Do not do any of those things. Durant rankings had him at 41st. Remembering Jalen Johnson was out for half the season. We don't know what moves the Hawks are going to make. And it'd be fair to say that the 3 steals could easily just be 2.6. Easily. And that changes a lot in terms of how you value him. But this is not here to just shit on Dyson Daniels because he was awesome. All right, he averaged 14, 6, and 4 with 3 steals. He shot 50 and unfortunately just 59 from the line, but 34% from 3. His ADP was 136, so we were like 2 rounds clear of that at draft time, and he was only drafted in like 38% of leagues. Someone left a comment, so I talked about this as the waiver wire pickup, and I said I'm not going to include him because I wanted to do only guys drafted in 10% of leagues, and he said that when he picked him up off the waiver wire, and it must be ESPN, but when Dyson Daniels was picked up off the waiver wire, he was 0.5% rostered, which again, like I'm pretty sure those guys aren't paying any attention over there, which does track because the ESPN rank for Dyson Daniels was, and this is the day before the season, by the way, his rank for category leagues was 202nd. I'm not taking the ranks that I'm going to reference. That was 202nd where he was positioned. I'll say that again. Dyson Daniels on ESPN was ranked 202nd. The 2 days or the day before the NBA season started. So yeah, like I didn't expect this from Dyson at all. I thought he played way more minutes than I thought. The steals obviously were up higher than I expected. And now this is one of those ones where people are going to be like, man, Dyson, he won me the chip. I loved it off the waiver. One of the best ads ever. I'm drafting him every year. Do not do that. Because now it's all about value. What you want to try and find is who is the maybe next Dyson Daniels, which we will not know until things open up. We have no idea. But just because Daniels provided you with this great value, and he did, it's because you picked him at 120, and then he finished inside the top 50. If you pick him at 50, and he finishes inside the top 50, well, you just did what you were supposed to do. It's no advantage. And that is why we love taking swings at the end of drafts. Getting the 110th best guy, and he finishes 97th, not as useful as getting the guy at 140, who could either be 300th or could be 30th. And that's what we got here with Dyson Daniels. The Dustbuster. This one here was one that I'll admit, I was scared of this one. I wonder if you know who it is. I was scared to do this one because I copped a lot, and I still do cop a lot about this player and my projection of him in the 23-24 season. Is he going to be Jordan Poole, is it? You're going to be like how you projected Jordan Poole? You dickhead, you don't even know anything. Stick to rugby, all right? Be one of those ones. But I have to trust, without being like cliched or lame, I have to trust the process of what I do. And while it clearly didn't work out for Jordan Poole the previous season, I thought that the methodology going to that team, playing more minutes, seeing your usage supposedly rise with the ball in your hand, should have meant better numbers. And it was terrible. But I jumped back on because everyone jumped off. In the end, people did start to come back around to that. But I had Jordan Poole by the time the NBA preseason started, ranked 54th in -1 rankings. He finished the season, Durant, at 53rd. His points league value was 77th. His ADP overall was 84th. But again, I am fairly certain, if I look at this, that Jordan Poole's initial ADP was miles off that. Let's see, where was he? No, he started at 84. And where did he come into? He went out to 90s. He just kept sliding out, that he ended up back at that 80 mark. Interesting. So he started at 89 and he went out to 95 and he came back in. So in the end, again, we got wizarded a little bit by Jordan Poole. Well, at the end of the season, Jordan Poole was 123rd ranked on ESPN for category leagues. That's, again, amazing value. I had him around that mid-round, round 6 zone. I think it worked out very well. He played the majority of the season. Had a few missed games towards the end, but averaged 20 points with 4.5 assists. He shot unbelievably well. 38% from the field. 38% from 3. 88 from the line. 43 from the field, 1.3 steals. Like, these are unbelievably good numbers. Will I draft him again next season? I honestly have no idea, because we all need to see how it all plays out. But Jordan Poole's not old. Jordan Poole was much better in the position that he was put in this season under the new coach. It worked out brilliantly, and I was very happy with that. And to me, while he was the literal thumbnail picture Jordan Poole for me last season on, hey, I screwed this up, now I'm very happy to have gone back to it, to have trusted the process, and for it to have worked out in a pretty big way. I'm very happy with how that turned out. The last name that we're going to take a look at here is another one of those guys where I think it's, again, one of the key things that, maybe it's not key, it's just a thing that we look at, where people look at what happened strictly only from the year before and then determine, that's it, that's what that player is. Because everyone's like, we're done with Darius Garland, he's trash. He can't play with Donovan Mitchell, doesn't work. I'm never drafting him, he killed me. And I made a very clear point on this show of saying, well, that's bullshit, because he has played with Donovan Mitchell, and he has been good playing with Donovan Mitchell. And he got his face smashed in the year before and couldn't eat for a month and was really quite bad. So I'm in. I'm in on Darius Garland. Now, was I in on him being this all-NBA? Yes, all-NBA level player. Maybe not to this level. But he ended up 31st in Yahoo totals. He ended up 45th in the preseason. His ADP was 62. His Durant ranking ended at 59. His -1 ranking ended at 34. I'm very happy with that result. Now, for points leagues, he's not quite as good of a number, 35.7 points, but he averaged 20 points a game, 7 assists, 1.2 steals. He shot 47% and 40% from three. To me, it was a relatively obvious bounce back. And again, I don't know how it plays out, and their team is incredibly dumb. Speaking of incredibly dumb, shout out to the Sacramento Kings for firing Monty McNair, who should have been fired and had made terrible decision after terrible decision. But they made the dumbest hire they could have made that wasn't rehiring Vlade Divac. They hired Scott Perry, who was terrible in Sacramento, went to New York and made terrible hires. And now he's back in Sacramento to make... What is with New Orleans hiring Joe Dumars and the Kings rehiring Scott Perry? Just some of the... and I feel sorry for Kings fans. You are passionate fans, yeah, like all fans, deluded at times. But all fans are deluded at times. But now you have to sit through this nonsense. Again, just idiocy. Vivek needs to go. He won't, he's an owner, but you will unfortunately never have success with Vivek Ranadive as the owner, and I cannot wait for the Kings and the Bulls to absolutely horrendously mismanage franchises who have no idea what they are doing in any capacity to trade Nikola Vucevic and Domantas Sabonis and expect them to have impacts on their own team and just be bad again. Again, these teams stink. What I'm saying about where that was little sidetrack got me to was the player who's going to mirror, I think, Garland is going to be Emmanuel Quickley. The problem is that team has no idea what they're doing and trying to fit Barnes, Barrett, Ingram, Pirtle. Where do they slide Dick into that lineup? And then quickly, that's going to be an incredibly bad team. For some reason, there's a lot of Raptors propaganda on my Twitter timeline at the moment. Man, this team, 50 wins easy. Look how good we are. We've got the strongest roster in the NBA. You don't. You've got a terribly mismatched roster that has no idea what it's doing. But anyway, Quickley is in the same sort of mold as this. A guy that injuries ruined the start of his season, couldn't get back into a funk. And we started to get back into a funk. They just started resting him every second game. But he's got the complication now of what happens with Barrett and Barnes and Ingram and Pirtle and Dick and lottery pick and whatever they've got. But that fits that. All that to say is that we'd seen Garland do this before. We'd seen him succeed with Donovan Mitchell. So I didn't have to invent a scenario where he could be good next to Donovan Mitchell. All I had to do was stretch my mind past one season. And that's another key thing. What happened in the previous season is not what just happens as we move forward. It doesn't mean that because it happened 3 years ago that it can re-happen again. That's not what that means. It's all about nuance. But blanket, closed statements of like, it will never happen, when we have seen it happen, are ways to go wrong. So Garland, to me, was a win. A lot of people avoided him. We got on board with that. It was way better at the start of the season. It did fade as the season went on. And I'm happy with how that panned out. Let me ask you, though, if you are here on the YouTube side or even on Spotify listening audio, you can leave comments on those videos now, or those audio now as well. Who was your biggest win Not necessarily if you draft a bit of a player, you went, I think he's going to be bouncing back. I think he's going to be way better than where people are drafting him. And whether you got him or not, whatever. But who's the guy that you were like in on? I'd like to hear that. Drop that in the comments below. We are going to do other shows than this, like the wins we had where we avoided players who were too high. And then we're going to get into the bad ones where we screwed up. And that'll be fun as well. Guys, we are done here. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya.